Hello, hello. I am live again for one of my unschooling talks. The power of being self-taught is the title of today with Sara. And Sara is almost in here. I'm into my live. And I'll took your... here you are. Hello.
Hi.
Hi,
How are
Sara. I'm good. I'm so happy you followed my invitation to this live. Thank you
Thank
for
you for
being here.
having me. Thank you.
I am holding those live talks once a week to the topic of unschooling or homeschooling. And I have guests, usually parents, who have their kids unschooled and homeschooled. Mostly from the German-speaking area, but also from all over the world, because I want to give an insight to everybody who is interested in this topic, how unschooling or homeschooling can be in all those different parts of the world, because it's not very common and a lot of people don't even know that this option is one to educate your kids or to have your kids raised without school. And you, Sara, you're the first person I have on those talks, and this is already talk number 19.
Wow.
You're the first person I have on the talk who experienced homeschooling or unschooling herself when she was a student.
Yes, I did.
So I'm really honored to talk with you about that. And as far as I know, you experienced that in the US, in the state of California. You live in Arizona right now. Is this correct?
Yeah, California, and then we moved to Arizona when I was 10 years old, so both.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So this is already a while ago. And I'm mentioning this in these terms because here in Europe, we don't have the tradition that someone in your age would be even, and I don't even really know how old you are, but an adult who already has experience with her profession and an adult life would have been unschooled or homeschooled. We don't have people with that experience in Europe. It's a very new thing. Although, of course, very royals, for example, or like very, what is the term? Very sophisticated people did homeschooling also in here, but not on a regular, as in not normal people. So, would you tell us, Sara, how did it come that you experienced homeschooling as a child?
So I did go to kindergarten when I was 5 years old, and my mom just kind of felt like there were things that I was being taught that she didn't necessarily agree with, and we were going to a church at the time where a lot of the parents homeschooled their kids. So she pulled me out, and that was the only year I ever went to school. And we started homeschooling right after that, me and my younger brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest of 9. And I was homeschooled all the way through high school. And my sister after me was, and then the sister after that did go to high school. And then some of the other kids ended up going to high school. So me and my sister Ashley were homeschooled the entire time, which is a little bit unique.
So 9 kids, wow.
Yeah.
My family had 7 kids. I'm the youngest of 7, so I don't think we have talked about this before, right?
No, we haven't. It's a lot of kids.
It is 9 even more. So you got the experience of being kind of a parenting figure for all the 8s probably after you, and I had the experience of being the child of all the 6 before me.
Yeah, you had 6 little parents looking after you.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Big families are so cool.
Yeah. So it really was probably some religious aspects why your parents decided to unschool or homeschool you? Is this what it was about?
That was a big part of it, especially for my mom. My dad was raised Lutheran, my mom was raised Catholic, and then they ended up going to just like a Presbyterian church. But the church that we first went to, homeschooling was a big thing. And then my mom really believed in like having a lot of influence and not allowing like outside influence. So she wanted to be the one to, which I think is, I don't know, I see it both ways. Looking back, I think you can definitely shelter your kids too much and not expose them to anything. And then when they do get into the real world, it's kind of culture shock. And that was my experience. But I also don't know that we necessarily want to just throw our kids to the wolves when they're very young either. I think there needs to be kind of a balance there of both.
Mm-hmm. And we earlier talked a little bit about our understanding of the difference of homeschooling and unschooling. And you said you were homeschooled and unschooled both. Can you go into that experience a little bit more, please?
Yeah, so it started out with my mom would order like different, like a full curriculum from like a company, and we would do all the work for our grade. And we did that probably for the first few years, but eventually it was like more like a unit study where you would just pick a topic and learn about that topic. And then it kind of, by the time I was, I don't know, maybe 11, 12, 13, it just kind of ended up being like zero structure, like just not, like really not even, like some days we would sort of do our schoolwork, but we really didn't do a whole lot of work. And it was a lot of the time I was the one just kind of like looking after the kids. So I was more cooking and cleaning and doing laundry and bath time and that kind of thing. But throughout my entire life though, my dad would read to us every single night, and he would read like Charles Dickens and J.R.R. Tolkien and, you know, classics, probably even above our age group, but we loved it. And we, you know, that was the one constant. And I think looking back, it was actually a big part of my education and a big part of why later I was able to be self-taught, to just teach myself what I wanted to learn and kind of have like the sovereignty and the autonomy to just go out and learn for myself.
Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, your mother and you sat on the table and worked through the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And then she pulled herself more and more out of that, and you were more and more alone in that. Is this what I hear?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good way of saying it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think there were extenuating circumstances, like she had health problems, and there were 9, you know, pregnancies, and it was a lot. And so I think like her own journey, I'm sure it was a lot for her to handle. But yeah, over time, I sort of took on more and more of the role of like caretaker of the younger ones. And so, and to be honest, I learned a lot from that too. Like I learned a lot of self-reliance. I have an amazing work ethic because of those kind of things. So, I think that everything that we go through serves us. And I don't believe that anybody necessarily has a perfect childhood. And also like knowing myself and knowing that like, I don't necessarily do well with a structured learning situation. Like I like to have the ability to like go for it when I want to and pull back when I want to and do it on my own timeline and do it in a way that feels good to me. So, it's kind of, I believe it was a huge blessing in retrospect. If you had asked me in my 20s, I would have said like, I hated being homeschooled. And, I felt like I missed out on like the social aspects of having a lot. I did have like other homeschool friends, and they're still my best friends, and it was amazing. But just having more of like the high school experience, like the social part of it, I really I really missed that. But I don't think that I would be where I am now if I'd had more of a regular experience.
Very interesting. And what would you have answered if someone would have asked you, like in your teenager years, about your experience? Did you like it back then, or how?
I was conflicted because by the time I was a teenager, I was kind of I would have been afraid to go to school. Like I was pretty shy. But there was a part of me that always wanted that. And then when our best friends, me and my sister, they were also homeschooled, but then they went to high school. And I always felt a little bit jealous because they got to do like prom, you know, just not even of the school work part of it, but just they got to have some experiences that it looked like a lot of fun from the outside. But I have ADHD, and I don't know that I would have gone to school and had the good experience. It might have been hard for me, and I might have labeled myself as somebody who couldn't learn or wasn't good or didn't get good grades. And I think that it's very possible that that could have damaged me to kind of have that label put on me. And instead, I had none of that. And it was kind of a free-for-all, but I think the free-for-all was what I needed, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
at least what my soul chose.
Mm-hmm. So there is one very important question to me when I'm talking about homeschooling and unschooling, because I always see it in the context of free and self-directed, a free and self-directed path. So this free and self-directed definitely was for your mom, but was it also for you?
I don't know that it was. There was at the time, and my mom has grown and changed since then, but at the time, she, especially during early high school, what would have been early high school years, she got like really kind of deep into fundamental religion, and she believed like a woman's place is in the home, and that I really didn't need to learn anything because I was just going to be a housewife and have a bunch of kids, like kind of like she did. So there was the curriculum that I did do for high school, and I only ended up doing like 3 of the units, but it was called Far Above Rubies, and it was about how to be like a Proverbs 31 woman. So it was basically just how to be a wife and mom. That was the entire curriculum, and I didn't even finish it, but that was kind of the vibe. And I always, from the time I was a little girl, wanted to work. And I don't know if you are into human design at all, but I'm a generator, and like I still to this day love to work. It's my favorite. I love my work. I love my clients. I get excited to go to work every day, and if I take too much time off, I get antsy. So that was definitely a part of who I was. And it was kind of like, no, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to get married. Like she didn't even want any of us, or especially for some reason me, maybe because I'm the oldest, but she didn't even want us to move out until we were married. And so when I did, that was kind of like a rebellious thing to do, to just go live on my own and have a job, and to not be on the trajectory that she had kind of laid out for me. Wow.
This is such an interesting story. I'm really very grateful that you're open to talk about all this, and I'm finding it very interesting that with all those experiences, you still say that from retrospect, from now, you really appreciate your path.
Yeah, I do. I think that we have 2 ways of looking at everything, and we can say it should have been different, but where does that get us? You know? And I think there were gifts in the path. And like I said, I have the confidence to teach myself anything. And that is what I've done. I am like an avid reader, and I have been my entire life. And so I'm always learning something. I don't think it ever ends. And one of the things, like our mentor, Melanie Ann Lair, always says is evolution and growth over a lifetime. And that's exciting to me. I don't ever want to stop. And I think when we stop growing, life gets really boring. So having not had education forced on me in any way has made me love to learn.
And really, what is more important to learn how to learn?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. 100%.
And really, that's something I already discovered for myself. I did go through regular schooling. As a teenager, I already knew that I don't know how to learn. And I was in school being aware of that and wanting actually to learn.
Yeah.
But all I was asked for was, learning by heart and
memorizing
and memorizing it and putting it out to a certain way, which is not really learning, is it? Right?
No.
I mean, this is so this for me was a very frustrating part, to realize that I'm using so much energy and time for something that's called learning, but I know that I don't know about it. I don't know, not the topic. I don't know how to digest it in a way so I really have learned it.
Yeah.
And this already, during the path, observing yourself that it's really not working for a higher perspective, and then you're still asked to do something where you feel this doesn't make any sense and you still are forced to do it. This was a very frustrating experience, really.
Yeah.
And then what I did even more experience was this power struggle, and what you maybe was longing for, this being part of this society, which in a teenager age or in a kid's age is cool. I felt so strongly that I was broken there, through all the bullying, through all the power struggles, through all the issues we have when it's about being better than the other one, and being being put in categories and all those things that are not really worthy for a human being, right? And so I totally can see that there is this part of you which is very human, who wanted to belong. But then of the other side, and this is probably what I guess your mother's intention was, what definitely my intention as a mother for my child is, yes, I can see that you want to be part of this society, but I really want to save you from the destructive part. As long as you are not strong enough to stand, or to deal with it in your own way, and you still can be healthy. And in my experience, my son is now 13, and he always has chosen it, for himself as well. This, I think, is a very different situation from the story I experienced with my son, and you have experienced with your mom. So my son was always part of the decision. He always could say, I want or I don't want. And there was actually some point a few years ago where he said, I want to go to school. So I managed that he could be for a day at school, so he can have this experience. And actually something happened which I already expected. After this day at school, he never mentioned wanting to be at school again anymore, because he felt how he was treated there, and this had nothing to do how he used to be treated, like as a worthy individual. And in there he only became this number, it became this object amongst others, and he
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, he's 13, and if, you know, whatever, I mean, it still might happen for whatever reason that he has to go or he wants to go or whatever reason he's in school. Now I feel his emotional foundation is strong enough, so he wouldn't be broken anymore. He would, I mean, he would have his challenges and he would have to deal with it, which is totally cool for me, because this is life. It's not that I want to, you know, save him from. But I didn't want to put him in situations where he still is very vulnerable and doesn't know how to deal with you know, power issues when he is in the position of not being powerful.
Yeah. Yep. That's such an interesting point, because I think it's really kind of one of the problems with traditional education is it's teaching kids to be obedient rather than autonomous humans, like rather than sovereign. And it's like, if you excel in this one learning style, then you're good. But what about everybody else? What about everybody who doesn't learn that way? And I think that there is kind of like there's Montessori schools, and there's people that they do try to address like the different, you know, or homeschool. There are alternatives, but for the most part, we're kind of just, kids are kind of just put into the system and expected that if that works for you, then you get to be like a productive member of society. If you get good grades, and then, you know, and it affects your whole life when you're like a little kid, like the grades you get or affect the scholarship, affect the college you go to, affect you for the rest of your life. So it is a vulnerable time, and it is a time where I think you do want to nurture that or protect a little bit their vulnerability. I never ever would have said this even 5 years ago, but if I had kids, I would definitely consider homeschooling them. Just given the nature of the world and where things seem to be going, and just, I don't believe in a one size fits all approach to nearly anything, because we're individual and we have different desires and needs and gifts and callings, and that's just not something that is nurtured or fostered in like the system.
So what, you know, during your journey of growing up, what else did you think you would miss out, other than being social, you know, in the social thing?
The social thing was really big for me, and then college was hard for me because I just, and I don't know that it might have been anyway, because I just don't think that traditional learning is the right learning style for me. But it was hard to go into a math or science class when I hadn't taken math or science since like the last science book I looked at before college was like third grade. And my last math book was like Saxon 7-8. I don't know if you know like Saxon math, but it was like not even to algebra yet. So going into, you know, college without the foundation in those areas was really, really difficult for me. I had no problem with any other subject. Like psychology was my favorite. History was awesome. Writing I was great at. So I did have the foundation in the one area, but if I had wanted to pursue any kind of science degree, I really didn't have a foundation for it.
And I mean, those what if questions, I mean, you'll never know really, right?
No.
I mean,
no. And I found my path. Like I don't know if I would have ended up a massage therapist, if I would have ended up like learning Reiki, if I would have ended up in the coaching industry, if I had a traditional path. I probably would have been like a nutritionist, you know, or something. I don't know. And I just don't know if I would have found my way the way that I did if I'd had a path laid out for me.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting? I mean, we met through our common mentor. Yeah, we have the same mentor. That's how we met. And I mean, there is this huge community around our mentor, but in general on this planet where so many adults are really into personal development and really getting to the roots of their potentials.
Yeah.
How do you feel in this collective of people focusing on their personal development and you seeing, being differently conditioned on learning? Do you see there any difference in this community?
In a way, that's an interesting question, because I sometimes feel that there are people, for instance, in like a coaching program, there's people who kind of want the answers handed to them. Like one of the things I love about Melanie is that she doesn't teach you like a step-by-step how-to. She teaches you energetics. And I think that when you have the ability to take self-responsibility and not look to the mentor or the coach to hold your hand through the whole process, but you take the information and you take the transmission and you internalize that and you embody it and you learn, it's a more empowering, I think it's powerful to be able to walk with yourself and to not need anybody else. And not that we don't need anybody ever. It's amazing. Mentorship is amazing. Mentorship has transformed my life faster and more thoroughly than any other thing I've ever done. And I've been reading self-help books since I was like 16 years old. But having like a physical embodiment that you can calibrate to of where you're going is insanely beneficial. But I've never been the one to like need more than what was given. And I hear a lot of people saying, well, but how? But what do I do? But give me something else. And it's just kind of like, and there's no judgment there, that we're all different, but I wonder if that is kind of a product of the traditional education system, is needing to be spoon fed.
Sara, you definitely have a very vulnerable point in my self-touch now, because especially in those high class containers with Melanie, I really discovered for myself that once I'm coming to this deepest point of not feeling in charge for my life, like, the deepest points where I do feel for some reason I'm a victim of circumstances. This is and especially in those containers, I've touched those places many times because, I observe myself that, I come to this point where I want someone to tell me how to do it. And then even tell me once I've done it that I did it all right. This validation thing on top of it.
You want the A+ grade.
Exactly. I want first to tell me, step by step, this is not my true self. This is my conditioned self wants it. My true self doesn't want to get any orders or any, they want to, find their own way and find my own path and do it my own way and like do these things. But once I'm touching to this hurt place within me, and I just, today I did a live on that in my group. This really, really righteous part of being a victim.
Yeah.
This got so strong through schooling.
And
still with, I'm like in my 40s now. There is still this strong part that wants to be righteous, that there is no other way of someone telling me how to do it and then validate what I've done.
Yeah. Wow.
And this is actually the reason why, I'm trying to do a different path with my son. And what I found really important, if we go into the terms like I see it, of homeschooling and unschooling. Homeschooling is working a curriculum. I think everyone is quite clear on that.
Yeah.
Like school at home.
Right.
But I much more believe even in unschooling, which means providing a safe space as an adult for my child, where my child can plug into his own guidance and his own, soul or higher spirit or whatever you want to call its potential, and evolve from there with the topics that comes from there, and the approach to the topics that comes from there, and the rhythm and the time and everything around it. But for not being this entire thing another name for abandonment, it really needs this safe space, which can only be provided if I am, as the space provider, doing this for myself as well.
100%. Yeah.
Because there needs to be this spark, this creative thing that inspires. Because if that's not here, the kid is still a kid. The kid still needs to learn how to do life, and we are the more experienced ones. But they don't need to learn who they are, really. They just need to plug into themselves, but they still need to learn that in this environment of life. And if I'm not inspired with life, then it feels like abandonment.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're the example of who for them, for your kid. Like you're learning and you're growing and you're excited, and that's what a beautiful example.
And then, this thing is still that the question is, will I ever overcome this really strong, righteous victim part in me that still wants to be, taught and not taking responsibility for it? And yes, the answer is yes.
You will, 100%. But it is a conditioning, and it's something that it's so interesting, because if you think about your whole life learning to please an authority figure versus just learning for the pure joy of learning, there's a huge difference there. And it doesn't set you up for success, because as adults, we don't get like a gold star for showing up like we did when, if you had a traditional education. That's exactly what you got. You got approval and validation and even love for doing the right thing and doing what you were supposed to do and being a good little girl and sitting still and getting good grades and doing your homework and all that. So I could totally see how that sets people up for continuing that into their adulthood.
And it's such a waste of energy, because, do you see the fight I'm still having in myself? Like, what I developed very early already as a teenager is this, fighting against authorities, rebellion stuff. But still, there is a still very strong belief that I need those authorities. So this fight is going on all the time. Over decades. And it's got, it's definitely gotten better, and it's not obvious all the time, but I'm not sure if it ever were not. The only thing is I wasn't always aware of it, maybe, but I don't think it was ever not. And for that reason, it's like, imagine what I could have done with my potential.
Yeah.
Not having this fight at all.
Yeah.
From the very beginning. So my question, Sarah, is now, do you experience some kind of a similar lifelong fight that came from a different condition?
That's an amazing question. I think I resonate with what you said about kind of being a little bit of a rebel towards authority. And I think for me, the authority was my parents and like fundamentalist religion, especially my mom, because my mom was kind of like the enforcer and my dad was the fun one. So my poor mom. but
bless her cotton socks.
Bless her cotton socks. Right? Yeah.
No, bless her heart, she would say probably in this
yeah,
case.
But I noticed, but in a way I kind of play with it because here's a really kind of funny example. I got back into Pilates and I was going all the time. I couldn't stop. I couldn't get enough of going. And every time I went, it was a $30 drop-in, which I think is a ridiculous amount of money to pay. But the reason why it's a $30 drop-in for your workout is because they want you to buy the package. So eventually I was like, I'm going all the time, so I'm going to buy the package. So all of a sudden it went from being like, I shouldn't be going to Pilates all the time. I'm spending all this money on like one workout class to I should go because I prepaid for the package and it's going to expire. So I have to, then it becomes like a should. And all of a sudden I'm never going because I have this rebellious nature. And as soon as something, and maybe that's just humans or maybe that's me and you, but as soon as something becomes something I should do or something that I have to do, I don't want to do it anymore. That's just my latest example. But I do think at some point, I don't know, is that something that needs to be healed or is that something to work with? Like, I know that I rebel against authority. So where can I give myself so much freedom? Do you know what I mean? Because I have no problem getting things done. Like, I am a worker and I love my workouts. It's not something that I dread. It's just, I don't like being told what to do, even by myself.
Yeah, I hear you. And this is such a beautiful question you raise. You know, does it need to be healed or does it only need to be worked with?
Yeah.
And I guess it's a question of frequency, where your present frequency lies. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are frequencies where it needs to be healed because otherwise you're stuck. And if you're in higher frequency, you just take it with you, you know?
It's one of your quirks. It's just kind of, oh, this is who I am. That's how I feel about it right now. I think if it ever got to the point where it was posing like a serious problem, like not going to Pilates is not a serious problem. But if it ever came to be that it was a serious problem, that would be different and I could look at it. But
so Sarah, you said you had friends or probably best friends who were homeschooled as well. Mm-hmm. If you look at their lives and their careers, do you see any patterns there or any distinctions you would do between them and kids who got traditionally educated? Is there anything that, sticks out?
For them, it was a lot more structured. It was definitely homeschooled and not unschooled. And then they both went to high school and then they both went to college. One was a teacher and now she actually homeschools her kids. And the other is a nurse and she still works a little bit, but she has kids too. And I think she also homeschools. So it was a lot more traditional and then they had high school. So it was very different for them. And they were involved in a few more of the other activities, and there was just two of them. It was just them and then their mom and dad, and their parents were both really involved. So it's almost comparing apples to oranges. They were the greatest part about we met when we were 12 years old. I was 12, Kristen was 12, my sister was 10, and Bethany was 10. So 4 sisters, and we've been best friends literally ever since then. And that's another reason why I don't regret my path at all, because I wouldn't have met them if I'd been going to a regular school. And they're still, to this day, mine and my sister's very best friends. So we live all over the place now, but it's one of those things where we get together and it's like no time has passed. But I think they had a really positive experience, and seeing them homeschool their kids is what makes me think that if I ever had kids, I would totally consider it, because I don't know, there's just something about it. I think that because I don't agree, like I said, with one size fits all, I don't want my kids brainwashed. And I think that if, when you went to school, it was like, here are all the different beliefs, you know, you take it or leave it. That's what I would like to see, but it doesn't really seem to be that way. It seems to be like, it almost seems to be like sometimes there's a little bit of an agenda. And I don't really resonate with that any more than I would resonate with there being an agenda at home of like, you have to believe what I believe. You know what I mean? I think I've always thought that you should teach a kid that there's all kinds of ways to believe and they can choose.
Yeah. I just was thinking about a different aspect of being not in school, regarding the daily rhythm and the structure of the day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. I mean, since you were also responsible for your younger siblings, you probably had to get up in the morning anyways, right?
Mm-hmm. We got up pretty early.
You couldn't sleep in like you...
Usually 6. I think we would usually get up around 6. Yeah, there was a time that we got up and there was usually a bedtime. So there was structure there for sure. I am not a morning person, and I was always grumpy. My whole family, like, they think it's hilarious. Like, don't talk to Sarah in the morning. And I'm still that way. I'm like, don't talk to me until I've had my coffee. But so for me, if I'd had the choice, I definitely would have slept later, but that wasn't the way that it was. We got up. Yeah. I think that would be a great benefit. And I've heard people say that their kids get more sleep. The kids today, they're in sports, they've got homework, they're learning 3 languages by the time they're, 5 years old. It's insane, the expectations that we have. My boyfriend and I were watching this thing on Netflix last night about Adderall and how all these kids are being medicated at a very young age because they're basically, I think the word they used was like, oh, I forget the exact word, but it's like, basically your whole value is in how good you are and with the grades that you get and being perfect. And Adderall helps you do that. And little kids too. And it's literally an amphetamine, but we're like, here you go, take your pill. I think that's the name of the show that we're watching, is called Take Your Pills. But it's a whole cultural thing of like, I need to be the best. And if I have kids, they need to be the best also. So we're just pushing them so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really can go into this kind of topic because it just makes me like, speechless, really. I mean, it makes me speechless how this can be. And on the other hand, of course, if you really believe in that conditioning of school, you always have to, drive for being the best. And at the end, all you are taught is still mediocrity. I mean, this is such a weird thing anyway, I mean,
yeah,
you need to strive to be the best, but really, once you're really creative and once you really get your best out of that's not, it's not wanted. They don't want to see that. They don't want to have that. They only want to have you at the best kind of mediocrity, which is, a really weird thing.
You just blew my mind. That is such an amazing way of saying it. And it's so true. They want you to be the best of the mediocrity. It's so true.
Because I mean, they all put everybody through the same frame, and I mean that's not who we are. So you can't bring out the best of you. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that when you look at some of the greatest, most successful, most innovative people in the world, and they didn't have an education. I think that there's something to that. There's a reason behind that. Even Melanie, she talks about how she didn't finish high school and she was never good in school. And, you know, she's a multi-millionaire.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it like in general. I mean, there are probably really good people who
100%.
went to school as well.
Yeah.
But this creative, this really inspired creative aspect of us, we all have that, because we all have our gifts, we all have our talents, we all have this unique thing that makes us really awesome in this one creative inspired aspect.
Yeah.
It's really hard to keep it through a regular school system.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, a lot of dropouts keep it and then do their entrepreneurial thing, or, you know, invent something, or, you know, keep their creative path, which is very unconventional usually.
Yeah.
Or I mean, maybe for some individual it just happens that they still can keep it because it fits into the system.
Yeah.
But this is, you know, this is just lucky, probably.
Yep.
Like you said, you know, like learning, you know, you can be lucky that the structure of learning in regular education system is by accident also yours, you know, you can be lucky.
It works for you.
Yes.
Yeah. And there are certain professions where you do, I mean, if you're going to be like a doctor or an attorney or an engineer or something, education would be beneficial, you know. But there's so many ways now, though, information is free and books are very affordable. And I've always kind of wondered, like, the whole college education experience. Like, I went for 2 years and basically we were reading a book and then writing a paper or taking a test about it, which I wouldn't necessarily need someone there for me to read a book. And I don't know that necessarily taking a test, it's like you said, it's memorization. That doesn't really, it's interesting that we pay so much money. And I'm not, like you said, like, I'm not knocking it. There are people where that is absolutely, that's their path and that's the right path for them. But I don't know that it's necessarily something that we should expect or kind of hold at this high value for everybody, because what even is it? We're learning with somebody, with an authority figure giving us a grade. And we could learn the exact same material on our
own. There are a few studies also on unschooling. I'm not sure if you ever heard of Peter Gray, who was like part of, I forgot the US state, but he is in the US and he was part of funding the Sudbury schools, like democratic schools. And from those observations, we actually scientifically know that we can't rate learning.
Wow.
We can't really rate, because, you know, I mean, maybe you have kids in your environment. If I look at my son and I'm not fully in charge of what he is, you know, working with, watching at YouTube, reading books, talking to people, you know, I don't know all the 100%. He you know, he does on, or he's putting information into his mind.
Yeah.
But still, even if I would know, I still don't know how the information gets connected with the other information he has. You know, this is a very unique way. So the realizations, the learnings, the things that land really, we never are able to measure that. Not for ourselves, and definitely not for others. So this, you know, giving grades and rating learning, this is a very, I mean, it's not what truly happens. I mean, this is something we made up, and we you know, we work with it, but, and then entire culture works with it, but it doesn't have anything to do, because, you know, like, I have memorized so many things, but I haven't learned it.
Yeah.
I have so many different grades and different memorizations. They are not saying anything about it, what I really learned.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I hope that this is something that shifts. I think that it will. I think there's a movement. Just, it seems dishonoring to human beings to like put them in boxes and rate them, like you said, like rating people, when you're right, we don't know. And just because you have the ability to memorize something and then regurgitate it on a test, that's not the same as long-term memory. You're not still going to remember that, you know, unless you use it. So yeah, I'm definitely like, I don't know if you get in at all to learning styles, but I'm like definitely a kinesthetic. Like I have to touch it and physically interact with something, and I have to do it. Like if somebody's showing me how to do something, that does nothing for me. But if they're like, okay, here's how to do it, and then I have to do it. I have to physically do it. And I think that's part of why I love my work as a massage therapist so much, because I get to touch, like I get to like physically interact with the world and with human beings, and that feels so good to me. But if I don't know, and I can learn from like an audiobook or reading a book. But as far as memorizing or figuring out how to do something, I have to do it.
And you reminded me that there is another aspect I wanted to mention in our talk, because my son, he just turned 13. He's like a real teenager now.
Yeah.
And Montessori or also Steiner, they all already, like 150 years ago, they already discovered that, especially in the age of puberty, it's not the time for learning, you know, academic stuff. You know, the brain is already working with, you know, rebuilding the body and rebuilding, you know, all the hormones and the chemistry in the body, and does definitely need more sleep. So for me, I think this is such a liberation that he gets to sleep in as long as he wants. I mean, he's in a group where they do their studies and they do their community and they do their learning and they do all the kinds of things. So he does get up 4 times a week very early, but he always has the choice of not to go that day. And he never skips a day. He never, I mean, it's only 4 days, but he never skips one of those days. And that, you know, on the other 3 days, he's really enjoying sleeping in. And on these 4 days, he's meanwhile really aware of when he goes to bed, because he says, especially the last few weeks, it's like kicking in again with the hormones. He's like, I need at least 10 hours of sleep. And he tracks that for himself. I'm not telling him when to go to bed or when, you know. And I'm actually the person, well, if you haven't slept enough in the morning, stay at home. I would say stay at home. No, he wants to go. So, you know, it's really, he's tracking that for himself. And he is really getting into this thing of getting to know his rhythm and his body. And also this past year, he really got into nutrition, and he cut really off with sugar. And I mean, of course, he sees that I'm aware of that too. But, you know, I tried to tell him this a few times, and he wouldn't take it because, you know, I'm the mom and he doesn't want to take it. But then he got it from somewhere else and from his mentor he chose in this group. In his learning group and studying group. And then he discovered it for himself, what it does when he cuts off the sugar and when he does, I don't know, more protein and less carbs and whatever he's, you know, testing out for himself. And he gets, you know, into this huge feeling of what's serving him and what's not. And I think this is just awesome. And this group where he is right now, I mean, of course, they do maths and they do some reading and writing, but it's really very low level actually right now, because what teenagers in his age really serve most is being physical. And what you just said, you know, this physical kinesthetic experience. And they have like a construction site, they renovate their rooms they want to be the whole year in. Right now it's an old building where they renovate, and they do like, they have plants, they grow plants, and they have chickens, and they do all kinds of things, and martial arts, and you know, so he really gets challenged in those topics that are very relevant for him right now. And it's not, I mean, he loves science, and he is interested in physics and in chemistry and in also all kinds of things, but in his own way, in his own rhythm, with his own context, with his own topic. And in the meanwhile, he you know, he can act himself out physically. And I'm very happy that I can provide that for him.
Yeah, that is so inspiring to me. And it just, like, I think when you approach raising a kid or even reparenting yourself in that way, you're making room for the whole person, and you're actually going to get the best out of that person, rather than, it's just psychology. Like when you try to force somebody to be a certain way or do something or fall in line, they're going to push back. Like what you push against pushes back. It's just human nature. It's like what you chase runs.
Sure.
What you run from chases you. It's just human nature. But I think we have it so backwards by thinking that, like, we have some kind of responsibility to control people, or especially kids.
And he, of course, he grew very sensitive of that. I mean, when he has interactions to adults who, like, you know, some older people sometimes who, like, you know, have these strong patterns with himself that, you know, they have this controlling attitude towards him. I mean, he's like, I mean, he can interact with them, but he definitely has to mention it afterwards to me that, you know, this person was very controlling. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm really amazed when I'm imagining that, you know, more and more children have the liberty of really being able to grow up within their power of their own potential. And then imagining what kind of society this creates only within actually one generation. I'm always in awe when I'm going that step in my imagination, because I think this is such a huge step of evolution when we can allow that.
It's going to change the whole world. Yeah. Amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Sarah. It's 8 o'clock p.m. here. I think it's definitely another time in your place.
It's 11. It's 11 here, 11 a.m.
We have been talking for an hour now. I think
Wow.
we touched so many beautiful aspects of that topic. I'm so thankful and grateful for that conversation with you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I'll put this talk on my Instagram grid and later on also on YouTube, so everyone can rewatch that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. It was just gorgeous. Awesome. All the best to you.
You
Bye.
too. Talk to you soon.